here with the Pulse co-editors in chief. We've got Cassandra Eller and Spencer Clifton in the house. Thank you guys for being here today.
In the house. Thanks for having us.
No problem, guys. Yeah, I've been meaning to have you guys on for a little while now. It's been kind of crazy trying to navigate this through the doing it all on Zoom. We started this out last year doing it in the studio, and we only got 3 episodes in before school was kind of canceled for a while. So
Dang, yeah.
you can imagine. So first, I'll just start with like the biggest question, biggest, most generic question that I can. How is it, sharing the responsibility of being an editor in chief of Pulse, especially with the challenges one would be facing right now? How is it sharing that responsibility?
Well, it's a lot of communication. It looks like a lot of group chats, a lot of emails. It can get a little overwhelming at times. Definitely took some, like some learning or some learning curves that we had to, straighten out like in the beginning. But it just looks like a lot of communication, a lot of going back and forth, bouncing ideas off of each other, making sure that if one of us has an idea and we want to follow through with it, we all have to know about it, including our staff. And it usually starts off with me and Cassandra, and then it just kind of funnels down and goes down. So that's kind of how it looks in my eyes.
Mm.
But
Yeah, it is a lot of communication. I'm very thankful for that though, because I feel like I'm not a great decision maker. So like I'll have like a few choices and then I'm like, Spencer, help me out. What do you think we should do? And then that's usually how things work. So I'm very thankful to have someone else that's like carrying the burden with me, I guess you would say.
Absolutely. And yeah, I was just thinking the other day, it's a good thing that this whole, if not, it's not a good thing, but if it's a blessing in disguise that this whole thing happened in a time when we at least have the technology to be able to communicate in various ways. Like I'd never heard of Zoom before this, so I'm really glad that Zoom exists. Things like that. But yeah, it is good to have somebody to share the responsibility with. I know Newswatch is doing the same thing right now.
mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's a weight off each of your shoulders a little bit on
Definitely.
some level.
And definitely like moving forward, like into this time, everything's virtual. I feel like we can fit a lot more into a day. It doesn't take me 15 minutes to like walk back and forth to different meetings and go to classes. I click a button,
Yeah,
so it's pretty nice to be like being able to be anywhere virtually. And like this includes like for interviews, sources, and other things too. It kind of feels like the world is more at your fingertips now than ever before. And I'm sitting here in my bedroom, so.
yeah, I think an element of this probably will never go away now that we've seen how easy it is to work remotely. And I think that like I wouldn't be surprised if even 5 years from now, it's common to attend class virtually if you can't make it in person, or it's common to just hold meetings on Zoom instead of scheduling real meetings. Because, like you said, this kind of just exposed like new ways to do things that in some ways it's a little more practical than, you have to be at 5 different meetings on campus today and they're all over different locations, but you're doing it right now from the comfort of your own home. So Cassandra, you are specifically the photography director. So what does that job entail?
A lot of it, I help assign stories to our other photographers and kind of help guide them into like maybe their niche. Like I personally love like close-up photography, like still lifes, food, that kind of thing, and that's my strong suit. So I'll tend to assign myself those stories. So like if I have a photographer who loves portraits, I'll assign a story to them that focuses more on portraits and like interacting with people in that way. And so it's a lot of that. Have to contact models and set up photo shoots in the studio. So um, yeah, I mean, I do photograph a lot, but more of it is like the clerical side of things, I guess, is like all the behind the scenes work.
Yeah, and knowing your staff must be a big part too, if you to know what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
So yeah, uh, and I noticed that you was the breaking the sex worker stigma, was that the only story that you had that you actually took photos for in the last issue, or was there more that I missed?
I think it was only that one. I was on a couple of shoots. Like I partnered with another photographer, but we chose their photos over mine,
Hmm.
which is always what I prefer. It's like if I can get someone else's photos in the magazine, I'm going to. That's my job as
Oh,
director.
well,
Yeah.
that's very wholesome.
Yeah. I think sex work was the only one that was just mine personally in the last issue.
So where do you guys do these shoots? Are they in the studio there at in Bouillon or?
We did have one shoot in Bouillon last quarter, but usually I will use the photo studio in Randall Hall because I'm an art major.
Mm.
So it has more lights and soft boxes and backdrops for us to use. But for sex work, I was actually doing it in my apartment because the Randall Hall was closed. So I set up a whole bunch of sheets and I
Oh
borrowed.
wow.
And yeah, so it was interesting to have a home studio set up like that.
Well, you've got to do what you got to do, man, to get the pictures you need. So being an art major, what got you? Where did the bridge between Pulse and your major? You know, because like a lot of if you're a journalism major, it's the pathway is kind of already there for you. But how did you get it working with Pulse as an art major?
Yeah, so when I first got here as a freshman, I saw Pulse. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. One day I want to work for Pulse. Like, that's awesome. And then nothing really happened, and I was focusing on my art classes and such. And then Maddie, the previous EIC, had come into one of my photography classes, and she was telling us about how Pulse needed photographers. I'm like, my chance. It's my chance. So I met up with her and started that journey and realized I have fallen in love with the editorial side of photography.
Well, hey, we're really lucky to have you. What do you think it will lead into anything career wise, or is it just kind of something that you're doing because you wanted to do it in college, or or is that the direction you're thinking of taking your career?
Yeah, I think so. I recently got an internship with Magnum Photos in New York, and that's kind of what I do now is kind of similar to what I'm doing in that internship. So this is definitely something I want to do in the future. I think this is where I want to go with my degree.
Well,
So
awesome. Congratulations.
thank
That's
you.
awesome, that internship. Spencer, sorry to leave you hanging down there, man.
No,
Are
you're
you
good. I love listening.
Hey, well that's a beautiful quality to have. Um, what is your major? Are you a journalism major?
I'm a liberal studies major, but I do focus in digital journalism and communication studies.
So what brought you to Pulse?
Well, I actually came to Pulse originally when I was just studying communication, and I was just taking my comm courses, and I happened to have a course with Maddie, our previous EIC, and we had to work together on some projects, and she just happened to mention, she's like, you're a pretty strong writer, you should come and write for Pulse. And she talked to me about it a few times, kind of pressured me to do it, and I was like, all right, I need to take more opportunities for myself. So I came into class, I think it was fall quarter 2019, something like that, somewhere in that range of time. And yeah, and that's kind of just where I started.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's Maddie doing what Maddie does best, bringing people in.
Yeah.
And you don't even notice that it happened to you until you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah, for real.
You've written a lot about one specific subject, and that is marijuana.
Yeah.
And consistently at that. What kinds of stories are we talking about here? Like, were you focusing on legalization aspects or like health benefits, or do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, first off, I think when I first came to Pulse, my mom had told me, she was like, Spencer, write what you know, and I'm like, all right. So I wrote what I knew, right? But I think this kind of ties into how I'm stepping into my EIC position as well too. Just kind of, I like those taboo subjects. I like those subjects that we don't like to talk about, and specifically with marijuana, I think there's so many things that we like we are stepping into a time where we're having some of those harder conversations about marijuana, right? But I feel like there's so much that is like being left out. So I've written stories on like medical marijuana and where the medical marijuana industry stands now, with recreation booming and everything. 'Cause what you don't realize is those medical patients really kind of get left out now. Um, I've also written about like marijuana convictions, like expungements and stuff, and the struggles that people with just like simple marijuana infractions on their record like experience and those hardships. So I like to highlight the things that we're not talking about. Like obviously, in I think in every, well, I shouldn't say every, but many college students' perspective, weed is this great, wonderful thing that's being legalized, great for the economy, woohoo. But there's so much that we're not looking at. And I feel like journalism and storytelling is such a wonderful way to kind of get in touch with those sides of the issue. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate there's a voice advocating for it because I've known a lot of people. I've known people who struggled with epilepsy who are this is the difference between their life being livable and not being livable. And I also have seen a lot of things about how hemp has if we were just to federally legalize hemp, we'd
Hmm.
be able to replace things like single-use plastics. And an insane list of benefits of things that we can make out of hemp that we could replace the things that are, we're putting into the world right now. Um,
Definitely.
so there's a lot of things that, you know, those aren't the things that get brought up when someone talks about legalization.
No,
So
definitely not. Not right now anyway.
not right now anyway, but thanks to journalists like you, we now know about these types of things. So you're doing good work.
Thank
Both of
you.
you guys are. So the new issue of Pulse, I know we can't talk too much about it. When can people expect it on the stands / online?
Well, first off, I think we should say you should go check out our social media and our Instagram to kind of get that teaser sneak preview at what we're going to be showcasing. Um, First and foremost, we got some videos and some cool pictures up there. And then let's see, Cass, you know when? Do you remember when we release it sometime in March, right?
It's
Early
sometime in
March.
March. It's early March. I have no
Yeah,
idea what the date is off the top of my head.
I know.
Or fail.
Exposed. No,
I know.
no
What week
worries.
is it? Week 7, 8? Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
We're blending together.
March, early to mid March. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. We were sending to print next week, so we are
Okay.
putting the finishing touches as we speak.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. And yeah, I know that, yeah, we don't like to talk too much about stories that are coming out before they've come out, but what kinds of roles were you guys, is this, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this your guys' first quarter sharing these responsibilities, or have you already done this before?
No,
This is our first quarter.
What kind of challenges did you guys have with this issue? Because first of all, I know that a lot of people aren't on campus. So are you guys still putting it out all over campus, or are you guys trying to focus on a new way to get the issue out to people?
Yeah, those are definitely some problems that we are considering and troubleshooting. I think it's important to us to continue to be in print and to have that hard copy. I'm a sucker for the hard copy, so I don't know, maybe that's just me, but we are definitely brainstorming some other ways to get the issue out to people and to kind of correct some of those problems. I think problems that we've initially run into, slight communication issues that we've had to fix. This is, I think, the first time in a while that the position's been split too.
Yeah.
It's the first time I know of at Pulse. I don't remember that ever happening since I've been here, but
yeah. So
it's definitely different. We are going to have prints on campus. So if you're on campus, you can pick one up. And then we always have it on our website and online. So check it out there. But yeah, I think our focus this quarter has been trying to bridge that gap between writers and the visual team and designers and photographers. So we've had some issues with communication, of course, that's going to happen, especially online. But I think considering some of the issues we've had, this issue's turned out great. So I can't wait for everyone to check it out.
no, for real. And a big part of coming together and splitting this role and kind of changing the way that we do Pulse, only releasing one issue a quarter instead of two, changing the look and the feel of the magazine. We've really wanted to emphasize the sourcing, the content, and the time that we put into it. So a big thing that people can look at that we can talk about with this upcoming issue is that the looks changed, the size has changed, and just the dynamic, the design, and the feel of our stories, I think, have changed with that for the better. And that is something that we're all looking forward to. So
excellent. I know I am. Well, as soon as that thing is out, I will have it in my hands, and we're gonna do a special edition of the podcast for the new Pulse. But that's all I'll say about that for now. Thank you guys so much for being here. Before we get out of here, do you guys want to let people know about your social media pages, specifically where to follow you?
Yeah. Let me look it up so I know that we're I'm giving people the correct username. Yeah, CWU Pulse Magazine on Instagram. Check out all of our stories and upcoming posts. And we've been talking about some of the issues from our past issues too, or some of the stories from our previous issues. So feel free to check that out too while you're waiting for the new issue.
Yeah. We're also on Twitter at CWU Pulse, and I believe we have a Facebook too. So just look up CWU Pulse magazine for that.
Awesome. And yeah, I'll remind everybody that you can also just go on the website. If you can't get a hard copy of the magazine, there is they're all available on the website. You can go read all the stories. So it's always available to you. Well, thank you guys very much for being here. You guys are the sharing of this responsibility of the editor-in-chief position. I think that's a great call, and only like you guys said, communication is key, and it seems like you guys are doing fantastic because you're good communicators, which I mean we're kind of in the communication department, so I hope so. But you guys are doing great. Keep up the good work, and we're all excited for that new issue.
Thanks, Jared. I appreciate it. Thanks for having us on.
Anytime. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, David Snyder joins me once again. Thank you, David. I appreciate you being here.
Of course.
I got my cat here with me. He came in and sat in the drawer. So
what's his name? His
name's Chaz.
Chaz. How you doing, buddy?
He's just gonna hang out. He decided he's gonna join us today. So I wanted to talk to you about your guys. The Newswatch crew got to meet Joe Little recently. And if you're not familiar with his work, for any of the listeners, you can go on and just go on YouTube and search Joe Little stand-ups, and he's like the king of doing good stand-ups like for local broadcasting. And the Newswatch director Terry is a huge fan of his, and she uses him to teach her students. And so it's really cool that you guys got to actually meet him. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Mariah Vias is the one who's responsible for this. For some reason, she likes to pop in every now and again and talk to me and Terry, and she's still kind of heavily involved in CWU journalism. And so somehow she's working at KHQ in Spokane right now, and she somehow got in contact with Joe Little through a story. And within 2 days, Joe Little set up a meeting with one of Terry's broadcast class, and she just allowed everyone to show up. And yeah, it was out of nowhere. It was surprising, but this famous guy just popped into our Zoom meeting, and
yeah, that's really awesome. That
2-hour-long conversation. Yeah,
that Mariah was able to pull that off. She, I was aware that she's working at KHQ, but I didn't realize she had contact with him, dude. Like, that's really cool. And he is like the king of the stand-up. Like, he has a lot of creative stand-ups. What did you guys get to talk about that? Like, how much Terry uses his examples to teach you guys?
Yeah, we talked about a lot of things. I think the stand-ups were probably like the last thing we really talked about, because I didn't really get anything from that. What I got more from him was like how to get a job in journalism, because he's also I think he's like a hiring agent at his station in San Diego. So we were mostly talking about like, what are the good elements of a story, what you should be doing to get a job in journalism, and how to prepare like a role. So that's more so what we talked about. We didn't really cover stand-ups, even though you consider him the king of all stand-ups, but
well, at least like on like the local news side of it. And like, I mean, just the fact that Terry, I don't know where she found him originally, but yeah, like I took like probably 3 different classes where she used that video of like a compilation of all his stand-ups, and just to show like, hey, even if you don't have a lot to work with, like, you can make a good stand-up out of anything. And for those wondering what a stand-up is, I'm not talking like stand-up comedy. It means like when you see a reporter on camera, like they're not just narrating over, not just doing a voiceover. When you see a reporter actually on camera at the scene explaining something, that's called a stand-up. And Joe Little is very very talented at those, but he's just a talented reporter in general. So it's really cool that you guys got to talk with him. And what kinds of things did he say about getting a job? Like, what were some of his points of advice?
He laid out like a very specific way to format a role. If you know what a role is, it's what aspiring news reporters send to stations, and that they kind of get an idea of what the flavor of the reporter is. And so he said like, oh, like you have to have 3 different stand-ups, each of which is a different tone. and each of which kind of is like shows your personality and like what people can expect when you're on air live. Yeah, just kind of, it's like a visual resume. That's what a role is.
Yeah,
But anyways, like he kind of talked about like, oh, like, yeah, you need to get on camera more. You need to show them like who you are as a reporter, not just who you are as a storyteller, even though that's very important. Which was kind of disheartening to me because, with COVID, there isn't really a lot of opportunities. And so I don't have a very big role. So that kind of sucked. But at the same time, it's just, I learned a lot from that.
No, absolutely. Like, like you need one that shows a little bit like, oh, here's a more serious story where, I don't know, like if something happens, it's not really like a laughing matter at all. You need to show that you can tell people what happened in a serious way, but you also need to show that you can have the ability to be a little lighthearted. And so it makes sense. Yeah, that sounds like great advice. I know at the end of, if you finish a journalism program, you have to put together a portfolio. And that's the kind of thing that a lot of us are working on right now is like, well, what's our portfolio going to look like? Depending on if we did more broadcast stuff, more print stuff. So, that's a good thing that he came at this time to, let people know when there are a lot of people that are working on their portfolio right now. So yeah, it's really cool that you guys got to speak with him. He's a legend. Before you get out of here too, I also want to talk about, it seems like you were working on a pretty interesting story this week.
Yeah. So what's going on right now is there is a group of linemen, electrical workers that are contracted with the city of Ellensburg. And the city, well, at least from the lineman's perspective, the city is using the pandemic as a means to lower their wages and cut their benefits. And also at the same time, kind of bargain in bad faith, because if they don't take the lower salaries, they don't take the lower wages or the lower, the worse benefits, they can just leave, and then they can bring in someone else from out of town as a contract. They can contract someone from out of town to come in and do that work for them. And so it's kind of a big deal right now because at the last city council meeting, like around 800 people tuned in to watch and to try and voice their opinion before council. To say like, this is, it's unethical. You're trying to drive jobs out of Ellensburg. There's obviously two sides to this story. City council, the city probably has been impacted by COVID-19 financially. But at the same time, the linemen are saying that the city is paying other utility workers higher wages, and they aren't cutting their wages, but they're cutting the linemen's wages, despite the dangerous work they do. Being up 25 feet in the air, handling 14,000 volts of electricity. It's not safe work. It's probably one of the most dangerous jobs in America. But then again, it creates this conundrum.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you find this a difficult thing to report on, given that, obviously you have to try and show like objectively what's happening when there's two varying perspectives, that of the city or that of the linemen who believe that they're trying to use COVID as a reason to cut their benefits and cut their salaries smaller. And then there's also the side of the city on whatever they are saying to justify it. Do you find it difficult to report objectively on something when the reality isn't exactly clear? Or is it clear?
No, not really. I don't think our job as journalists is to like paint a narrative.
Absolutely.
I mean, some people do, and probably unethical. But I think our job is just trying to convey the perspectives, just to convey the humans behind the story. And that's what I want to do, is I want to give these linemen a voice, while at the same time, conveying the city council's perspective on it. But at the same time, the reason this is an issue is because of the way these linemen feel, and there's other people who feel just the same way. There's over 800 people feeling just the same way. So I'm not going to say like this is right, but I'm going to say like, they have a dangerous job and they feel like they're not being compensated fairly for that job.
Absolutely.
And then I'll give the city council's perspective on it. Mayor Tab said something that I was going to include in my story, but I don't think I'm going to go too deep into like the logistics of it or like the money aspect of it, because there's not enough time for that.
Yeah.
But I will share the perspectives. Where are they coming from? They have to uproot their families, how's that gonna make people feel about this story, you know?
Yeah, well, absolutely. That was the correct answer. That, you know, it's not anybody's job. It's not your job as a journalist to paint a narrative. Your job is to present the perspectives of the people involved, and the reader may or may not decide for themselves based on that. But that's, you know, if that's your approach to it seems completely legitimate, and I think that that's the reason you're in the position that you're in, man. It's because you're thinking like a journalist now. And that's this is the kind of story that, you know, you got to be careful with doing things like that. So it's a good thing that you're reporting on the story. It's a good thing you have that stance on it. That story hasn't been released yet, right? You haven't put it out anywhere yet?
I'm working on it right now. I'm actually literally just working on the script right now. Almost done with that, but yeah, I think it should be out by Monday, hopefully. Usually we set our schedule back to Tuesday, but I get my stories done early for this very reason, because I don't want there to like be any changes before
absolutely.
I get the story out. So I think it's gonna get out as soon as I get it done, but we'll advertise it.
Well, then this podcast also comes out on Mondays. So if you're hearing this right now, odds are this story has just been released or is going to be released momentarily. Check it out. This is an example of the kind of stuff that student journalists in Ellensburg are doing for the community, because it's not just a university news outlet. You got to remember that this is the whole Kittitas County. This is the only broadcast news in Kittitas County. You guys are reporting on things for the townspeople and the citizens as well, not just the university members. So nice work as always, David. We're running out of time, but thank you for being on here today. I really appreciate it. I'm super stoked you guys got to meet Joe Little. That's awesome. And this story that you got coming out sounds like a textbook example of the kind of stuff you guys do with the community, and you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Good luck with the rest of the quarter. And that's going to conclude our Student Media Podcast for this week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Actually, we will be back the week after next. We're going to take another bye week real quick, and we're going to come back when the new issue of Pulse is released. We'll have members from all the student media outlets. Thank you very much. Have a good one.